probe you a bit, Dr. Mitra,
Certainly.
because it is very clear that you've joined the Trinamool Congress because of Mamata Banerjee, because you think that she can achieve or bring about change for West Bengal, which has stagnated and which has declined tremendously. Now the question is, what is it that inspires you about this lady? Because her politics is a very agitational, very earthy, very street fighter kind of politics.
Well, I think first I must confess that I haven't met her today. For 1.5 years, I was working with her as the chairperson of the Experts Committee of the Railways.
Right.
And that is something which relates to administering, whether it's a state or a ministry. And I found in her a tremendous capacity to inspire people. And also the tremendous capacity to constantly strategize. And believe it or not, she is a person who's as though she's a CEO. She will come in the morning and she has a list and she will immediately start pushing people why this was not done in time, where is the time's frame, why can't we think differently? This is a part of Mamata Banerjee that nobody knew.
So you believe that she's a good administrator and she will provide good governance?
Yes, I think she's a very focused administrator, but with a constantly coming with a human face.
But you know, Dr. Mitra, there was a white paper that was brought out before she became railway minister, where there were a lot of analysis done of how that ministry functioned, and it was said that it should grow at 1.25 times GDP and things like that. And yet the railway ministry, cargo has grown only by about 6%. The point I'm trying to make is that people believe that she has not done such a good job of managing the railways. Why will she do a good job managing West Bengal, and why do you believe that?
Well, I think this perception that you're reflecting, obviously there is a perception. But let me correct a few things, factually. First of all, she brought out for the first time in the railways a white paper. It was while she was minister and placed it in Parliament.
Right.
In which the previous minister had suggested 88,000 crores of surplus. Now, careful analysis showed that there were 2-3 things that he did which resulted in this huge surplus in paper. She was able to analyze with people, obviously with experts, and it came down to 43,000 crores. The reason being that the previous minister had pushed back certain things. For example, financial structural change he brought, which resulted in inflating this process. Not intentionally, but it was a change. He did not implement this pay commission's recommendations, front-loaded it. All that taken into consideration, first one must realize, no one had presented such a creative white paper before.
Fair enough.
And let me tell you, as a person who worked with her, every bit of it she absorbed and came to certain positions. The second thing you said, which let me just put a fact on the table, she's the first one to present a Vision 2020. Interestingly, in Parliament, there was no criticism of the white paper. She produced an expert committee for public-private partnership and innovative finance.
Which is what you were heading.
Which I am heading, which is socially desirable but economically not feasible today. She formed that committee. No railway minister had ever done that before.
So you're saying that the fact that the railways should be able to grow 1.25 times the GDP is something that's a vision for 2020?
Not only a vision, that is achievable. That's the elasticity of GDP and railway growth. And this is achievable. This year, of course, you could see that the freight has declined partly because of iron ore. China stopped importing iron ore. There were huge stoppages of rail all over the country for any reason. Some Jat Panchayat fight in Rajasthan resulted in stoppage of rail. The movement in Bengal of extremists or non-extremists or CPM or whoever stopped rail. Once a train stops, the whole structure of railway movement gets disturbed. So there were many reasons why this year still she did 91.2% of the 100% receipt. So if you received 100 rupees in freight and passenger fare, cost to railways was still 91.2. Unlike what people think, because this has never been told to people. So I would say it is not as a bad job at all. In fact, she's done certain innovations. The number of trains she's introduced for the common people is unbelievable. Now the number of factories that are going to be in the private-public partnership mode in Bihar and in Bengal, can you imagine? Nobody talks about that. Marora, Madhepura are not in Bengal. Kachrapada is in Bengal.
Right, right.
So she was spreading wagon factory from Kerala to UP to Bihar. So these are not talked about because only a perception that you talk about overtakes the facts.
There's another perception that
Yes.
the Trinamool Congress, Mamata Banerjee and people who work with her will have to fight, and that is the perception that Mamata Banerjee is anti-industry, because while the reasons may be very nuanced and complex, the bottom line is that one of the biggest industrial houses in this country took their most ambitious projects and exited the state. How will you address this perception tomorrow if the Trinamool Congress comes to power in West Bengal that you all want industry in the state?
You know what's interesting is the case that you cite. When I spoke about it, I spoke about also the left government's inaptitude. If you expect that without getting checks accepted by 2,000 farmers of 400 acres, you ask ancillary industry to start construction on their land, is that fair? That's a state power. Why you see this change reaction which your camera followed and you followed me today? Why this huge upsurge? Because state power was being used rampantly like a Stalinist state. Many left-oriented people in Bengal have joined Trinamool because they feel this is not left. This is Stalinist boot of a government. This is what happened in Nondigram, where party workers went and killed people, that all of us know. At least allegedly killed people, the cases are all going on. In the case of Shingur, which you are alluding to, the mishandling of the land, even bureaucrats have come to me and said to me, as FICCI Secretary General quietly, the whole thing was mishandled, the whole thing was bungled. Now, if it is a company which is dealing with it, should have had the savviness to understand that this is not the way you can run an industry, because if there's an upsurge all around you, how can you get peace and run an industry? So I think they exited not because of anything but the fact they realized that there's an upsurge around this whole process based on criticism of the government, not them so much, and it was time for them to exit, otherwise they would never be able to run a factory.
If you were to have the Tata kind of project on your table, how would you deal with it?
It's very
How would you
simple.
deal with it differently?
I don't think it's difficult. The CPM never applied its mind because it had absolute power for 34 years, and absolute power confuses you and deludes you. You take the case of Haryana. Huge industry coming up in Haryana. Have you had a land dispute? Why not? Because there is a beautiful case which has to be further considered by everybody. First, you get the market price. 2, you get a job. 3, you get an annuity and no force. What Mamata Banerjee is saying is don't force people out of their land. You talk to them. You cajole them. You make them understand what it is about. And at the end of the day, if they say, well, this part I am not going to give, you cannot use the boot. No democracy in the world has ever seen boot being used and kicking people out. Only China does with a 15 days notice, you're out within 10 kilometers. But we are not China.
What is the message that you would like industry to hear or believe where the Trinamool Congress is concerned?
Well, I don't think there's any dispute in my mind because I have been approached. I'm sure Mamata Banerjee has been approached 100 times more by solid industrialists, including big public sector units, who have said that we need transparency, we need peace, and we need democratic condition. And we will come. What does an entrepreneur look for? Today there's a trade union in Mamata Banerjee's party. That trade union is a collaborative trade union. In Khorda, Mamata Banerjee's trade union, today just as we sit here, is working towards 16 young people being employed in a factory just across the road from where we are sitting, on a collaborative platform. They will agitate if there's something wrong done, but they are primarily not class struggle oriented. They are not class antagonism oriented by theoretical mindset. They are democratically inclined, wanting to collaborate. Once you have a collaborative worker management environment, and Mamata Banerjee's great strength in total integrity, everybody accepts that, and transparency. If you look at a manifesto, it's strewn with transparency in governance.